a Solutions Talk, part of 2020's Esquire neighbourhood event. My name is Mike Christensen and I'll be the host for what's set to be a really insightful discussion. Global warming, overfishing, oil spills and plastic pollution have pushed our oceans to the brink, but there are solutions at hand, and together we have an opportunity to make a difference, particularly when it comes to actively reducing plastics in our daily lives. As a keen surfer myself, it's a topic that is especially close to my heart. Today, this talk will focus on innovation as a solution to the crises our oceans face. We will champion positive actions taken by individuals, organisations and governments to showcase how collectively we can make great change. To discuss this pressing issue, we have an impressive panel of speakers. In the lineup, we have the founder and CEO of Parley for the Oceans, Cyril Gutscht. Parley is a new form of environmental organisation that brings people together to raise awareness for the beauty and fragility of the oceans and collaborate on projects that can end their destruction. Next up, we have Cody Simpson, best known as a singer and songwriter. He also serves as a United Nations Development Programme Ocean Advocate, for which he uses his profile to raise awareness of the important roles our oceans play in the health of our planet and people. We have George Bullard, who's a world record-breaking explorer and motivational speaker on a mission to re-wild humans. George's belief is that through the outdoors, we can change lives. And we also have Ben LeConte, best known as the first person to swim 330 nautical miles through the Great Pacific Garbage Patch in 80 days. LeConte's mission was to analyse the amount and type of plastic in the oceans, as well as its impact on the ecosystem, and followed his 2018 attempt to swim from Tokyo to San Francisco to bring attention to the declining state of our oceans and collect valuable scientific data. So guys, welcome. Introductions all done. It's great to have you all on here. Let's kick things off. I'd like to start with you, Cody. You grew up on the beach and you've surfed from a young age and swum from a young age, but can you recall the moment you realized the ocean wasn't in a very healthy state?
That's a good question. I feel like in my life, I was born and have grown up, am still growing up in a very, crucial, very pivotal point, in the state of, our planet. I just watched the new David Attenborough statement piece, and he talks about how, people my age, me still being, not 24 yet, just growing up at this time is very interesting because I see the changes firsthand. As I'm sure we all do, but from being a young person, growing up in Australia, between Australia and California, having seen the state of things worsen rapidly to the point of actually, when you can tell that you can actually notice, when you can see that you can actually notice things. Like I remember being 6 or 7, going up and snorkeling the Great Barrier Reef, and then going up again more recently and seeing extreme changes in the coral bleaching and just the general state and diversity of the marine life up there. And it's quite shocking, and I remember vividly a couple of years ago, there was a heavy rain period, rare for LA, but I went surfing up in North LA County or Ventura County, and probably too close to after, the rains, because I didn't kind of really stress the seriousness of how that can affect the water quality when the river inlets break out and stuff like that. And I actually got really sick after. And, that was really sort of eye-opening to me too, realizing that, like, one, I can see the changes happening firsthand, and two, like, they can literally affect my health by doing something I thought was healthy, like going in the ocean. It's scary thought.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
On that kind of, we mentioned your role with the UNDP. Can you tell us a bit about what that involves?
Yeah, it's I've been working with them for probably better part of 4 or 5 years now, and from the beginning, we'd started to sort of started immediately planning these trips, documenting plastics pollution specifically. We did a trip to Costa Rica, and we did a couple of trips around the States, just documenting the ever-growing issue of plastics around the world, and especially here in the States, in Australia, and places that at least I spent a lot of time. And between that, having spoken at the some of the environmental summits a few times there, and just generally kind of using my platforms as a megaphone for, not that they need one, but for at least for some of the younger people that may not be necessarily paying attention or following some of the initiatives that they're putting on, for me to be able to at least sort of direct that message into the ears and eyes of young people and teenagers around the world that otherwise probably wouldn't care, or at least just aren't educated. You know what I mean? There's in so many school curriculums and things still around the world. I was fortunate enough to grow up in a place where environmental awareness is considered considered important and something to learn about, right? Even in school, it's like you'd be surprised at how few communities and parts of the world really prioritize educating people on it. And so I saw a void in the way young people use their social media platforms today, and was like, well, I need to somehow
get people engaged.
Yeah, exactly. I'm disappointed seeing fellow musicians and young people and things like that with these just enormous social followings promoting the most trivial things, so it's disappointing. And so I just try and do my best to not to do something different.
Thanks, Cody. Now, Cyril, big question to ponder straight up. Have we reached a tipping point in the health of the oceans, or do we have time, or even, do we have time to halt or even reverse our destruction?
We definitely are in this moment where every decision, every move that we make has a big impact, and there's no time to lose. And we believe that in the next 10 years, we decide how the next 10,000 years look, because we're driving species into extinction. And once an animal is gone, it's not possible to bring it back. Therefore, the most important piece right now is to kind of assess quickly what it takes to turn around all the damaging factor, all the negative impact that our industry is causing, and do that in the fastest pace possible. And I like to kind of think at it as a project management exercise. We shouldn't think about, oh my God, the future is in danger. No, we got 10 years. And how do we use these 10 years? And how do we use these 10 years to completely redesign the way we're making things, the way we're using things, the way we are actually behaving towards nature?
So you've described plastic as an inherently flawed innovation. But what do you mean by that?
I think a material that needs so much effort to deal with it after consumption, after use, is not designed properly. And a material that leaks like things into our bodies, into the atmosphere, into our environment, it's not considered safe. It's not good design, And plastic is all of that. Plastic is a design failure because in itself, it's toxic. It has a negative impact on our health. And we're using it in a very short period of time, and then it still stays with us. It stays with us for hundreds of years. And if you compare that with like products and packaging from nature, if you compare a plastic bottle with a coconut, then you actually understand what good design is. The coconut is, with millions of years of research and development. This is never an alien matter that destroys another being. No, after it's being consumed or neglected, it just falls apart into building blocks, into nutrition for something new.
For sure. And it's amazing you saying that. You know, people hearing that will immediately just think, shit, I haven't thought about that. And yeah, nice way. Thank you. And George, to you now. I think you were 14 when you swam the English Channel, is that right? And 19 when you completed the longest ever unsupported polar journey. So it's fair to say you've had an attraction to extremes from an early age. But being this close to nature, has there been a moment when you were awakened, I guess, to the fragility of our environment?
Yeah, 100%, Michael. Firstly, it takes a very small brain to do those sorts of things. So the stuff that you mentioned about swimming the channel and spending a long time in polar region takes an exceptionally small brain. So trust me, I've got nothing else. I own nothing or possess nothing that makes me any different to anybody. For me, at the time when I noticed the significant effect that humans have had on the ocean was not all that long ago, 2015. I was sailing across the Pacific Ocean straight through the middle of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. And I was absolutely stunned. I've covered quite a few oceans now, the Southern Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, racing sailing boats and other such craft, sort of kayaks as well. It's very daft. But this particular journey, I was absolutely stunned by the absolute dearth of animals. One thing that I never really understood, but before I went onto an ocean and spent time there, was just how fragile and how vulnerable it makes you feel as a human. Right. So without the safety and security and warmth of the vessel, of the boat or the craft that I live on, I would last, depending on the water temperature, I wouldn't be able to survive. Period. Down in the Southern Ocean, you've got sort of 4 or 5 minutes life expectancy. Maybe in some more tropical waters, you can survive for a little longer, maybe 24 hours. I was just shocked by it, but pleasantly reassured in 2008 in the Southern Ocean by the sheer biodiversity of plants, of phosphorescence that trail behind the boats at night that you can see with your own eyes. And then in 2015 on the Pacific Ocean, there was nothing. It was dead. I had to swim. We had to back the boat down 4 or 5 times because of ropes, fishing gear, all sorts of stuff that were stuck around the keel. That was me swimming in the middle of the ocean to try and get this stuff off the bottom of the boat. We genuinely saw more bits of plastic than wildlife, than birds, than anything. So it was really shocking, and I kind of go as far. Admittedly, the human eye is pretty dumb to being able to see wildlife all the time. We're loud, clumsy, we've got eyes in the front of our head, we haven't got the 360 vision like prey does. But I was really embarrassed at that moment to be human.
Wow, I feel embarrassed just hearing what you're saying, and I think from that, we talk about the almost that transition from 2008 to 2015. Is it fair to say, all around the world and all around the way, places where you've been, these adventures you've been going on, that the natural environment is degrading quite visibly? Then, not just from where you're saying in the Pacific.
Yeah, absolutely. So just for clarity, in 2008 I was in the Southern Ocean, and then 2015 we were in the Pacific Ocean.
Exactly, yeah.
So of course they're different, right? But more generally speaking, yeah, without doubt, I've done some really simple science over the years. Again, the sort of small brain tends to work very well with simple science. But things as simple, things as simple as retake photography. So if we go into the archives, the RGS have amazing archives. So the Royal Geographical Society in London have phenomenal, beautiful archives of pictures taken from the early explorers, the pioneers from the early 20th century, even before that, of course. And I simply found these pictures. We find these pictures and the location where they were taken from, and go back and take the same picture, stand in exactly the same location, lift the camera with the same skyline, ocean, breach line, whatever it is, and take the same picture. And you kind of got 1915, early 20th century, 21st century right in front of you, bam, 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 just right there. And the comparisons are stark and it's quite scary, to be honest. Things like glaciers, that's a really obvious one, because you've got this phenomenal valley with two mountains which haven't moved for millennia. Not quite millennia, but haven't moved for a long time, centuries. Let's go with, that's probably safer. And you get this glacier that's sort of being rooted to the back of this valley. Again, for a lot, probably since the Ice Age, has been not slowly retreating over the last 100 years, pretty rapidly retreating, disappearing, and that's very scary for a number of reasons. And I think we'll come back onto that later. I'm going to stop speaking now, but I think it's super scary, and I think only now are we really starting to have these conversations, and brands like Adidas have really been pushing this since since Cyril got involved with them. Then he'll be able to tell us how long ago.
Thank you for that, George. Ben, for you, what are some of the most surprising discoveries, I guess, you've made about the oceans on the long distance swims you've taken on?
Yeah, so it's not surprising that I'm the oldest here. I think we can all agree with that. And what I will say is that, I remember when I was a kid and swimming, and my father taught me how to swim in the Atlantic Ocean. And I remember playing on the beach and never seeing any plastic around. Now it doesn't matter where I go with my kids. When we play, we see plastic everywhere. In the US, in Asia, in Europe, we see plastic everywhere. So that just took less than a generation to totally change and transform the world as we knew it, as I knew it as a little kid, right? So when I was swimming, and it's something that I have a deep passion for, swimming, open waters and all that. I am not like Cody, I'm not a competitive swimmer by far, I like the blue open, but I am kind of nerdy about it, because it's where I feel that I am it's my place, right? So what was very surprising to me is to realize that there is two stories. One story is the one you get when you're on the deck of a boat and look down and see plastic floating and what's going on at the surface. But just only one part of the story. The second part of the story, it's when you spend 8 hours swimming through that, and you have the water column that is below you, right there in front of you for those 8 hours. And you see exactly the quantity of plastic and microplastics that is there. It's, so I went through the garbage patch to different density, because we were following 11 different scientific protocol onto measuring what type of plastic density and so on. But if I have to compare it to an image that I think everybody can visualize, is that you put yourself at night in a snowstorm, and you look up the skies and you see all those flakes going down. It's what I was seeing upside down, seeing all those microplastic floating around. But what was maybe the most surprising to me is that you see sea life around it. The highest count of microplastic that we collected in one particular day was the amazing moment that I had swimming with sperm whale. So you have all those life that is around it, that live through it and with it at the same time. So to have those happening at the same time, I think it's very, very troubling.
Yeah, wow. Cyril talked about, I guess, plastic being flawed, but Ben, can you elaborate, I guess, on what you've mentioned there, but on what microplastics are and how damaging they can be?
Yeah, so microplastic is just regular plastic that started like a regular piece, piece of plastic that we have around, that by the action of the wave, but most likely the action of the sun, is going to break down into small pieces. And the definition is that when they are 5 millimeters or smaller, then they become microplastic. So, lot of it in the ocean, and we did a lot of sampling and a lot of little pieces that you have to use a tweezers to get. It's what we can see, but when it comes even smaller and we cannot see it, they are still present and they are being ingested by fish. Sea life is living on it. They are emitting gases, so they are interacting with the sea life, and sea life is interacting with it. And we don't know the exact the exact drawback on what it happened to the sea life. Some science has started already to do research on that. We know that we ingest also plastic through the aliment that we eat, but we don't know exactly the health impact that it has on human yet, right? But that's the scary thing, because plastic has that property of holding on to a lot of chemical component. So when you ingest plastic, maybe the plastic by itself is not the problem, but you have a lot of component and chemicals attached to it that are going to go through you and through your organs. So we are eating plastic no matter where we live, on the beach or in the mountains. No matter where we live, we are eating plastic now.
Yeah. I heard there was a really interesting study done that the average human now consumes a credit card's worth of plastic a week. Is it a week, a month, a week? Yeah. That's true. We did a really interesting study in Costa Rica. I met this scientist down there. We were on the beach doing this sifting with this certain, I don't know what exactly they used in the water to separate the microplastics from the sand, right? But we did it on the shoreline as it washed in. And the ratio of sand to plastic was shocking. Like what you'd think was sand on the tide line was, majority at times microplastics that you'd imagine were rocks, and they were bits of trash. And so that was really, really shocking to see that as they separated the elements.
What have we got there?
Here's the shocking piece.
Oh God, damn.
I don't know. You'll be forgiven, and you'll be totally incorrect if you thought that was my bank account. That's the number of plastic bags that have been produced so far this year.
Where is that? Where is that on? How do you find that?
Just the world counts.
Wow.
Obviously, it's not exact.
Right.
But I don't know. You got 4,289 billion. I think that's right. I'm reading it backwards, but
yeah,
isn't that crazy?
That's real-time production right now.
You need a big brain to be able to read numbers backwards, mate.
Whoa.
Got a big brain.
Yeah. That's me out.
George, I think you've got a larger brain than you give yourself credit for.
That was really interesting to hear from you, Cody. One thing I just wanted to go back, Ben, you talked about this idea of being in a sort of snow blizzard, but can you kind of describe literally what swimming in a plastic vortex actually feels like from a physical point of view? Like, can you are you literally swimming through? Yeah, talk me through how that.
Yeah, so that's kind of sad to say, but after a while you get numb. You see it over and over every day. I was getting ready and then jumping in the water, and I knew what I was going to see. So what you see is more or less, depending on the condition also, you have to ride light hitting those little flakes that will reflect the light. And also during the calm weather, you will have more of the plastic going up to the surface. So the first part of the water column, you will see it more. But it's constant, and it's there around all the time. What is interesting is that for me, any type of changes, sea life was a big moment in my day, because I am doing the same thing over and over, very limited type of stimuli, always having the same visual. And then when you have fish coming around, you are like, wow, sea life, amazing. But what happened is that whenever I had fish coming around me, it's because you had a big debris, a big ghost net or a big piece of plastic somewhere, and they were living around that. So they were coming, checking me out, and then going back to their house. So I was following them, and sure enough, there was another big piece of plastic. So that's one of the big things also with the plastic floating, is that it creates some type of ecosystem that starts in one part of the ocean, and then because of the current is going to end up in a different part of the ocean. And those species that are starting following the plastic become intrusive into that new ecosystem. So there is so many layers of problem that is there with the plastic.
Right. Thank you, Ben. Okay, so next I want to talk about positively enacting change. So Cody, kind of starting with you, you touched on this idea around the responsibility you have as with your social media following to be able to kind of raise awareness for good causes. But have you seen any significant changes from your audience as a result of some of your activism?
Yeah, I think two things. I guess the first being immediate, interactions like comments or posts and things saying, here, you've inspired me to buy a Keep cup, or so something as simple as that, like or a reusable water bottle, and I now no longer use plastic bottles, or I stopped my subscription to I don't know what one of the brands would be. People get plastic water bottles delivered still, or I've stopped. I started asking for reusable bags at grocery stores and things like that. Things that people tell me that they've done or been inspired or encouraged to do as a result of some of the things I've been able to share, which is encouraging. And what I've seen is that young people, especially now, I think are becoming progressively more and more aware, or at least a lot of the people that I know that perhaps 5 years ago may not have cared so much are now incorporating these little practices into their lives, and that's something that gives me a sense of optimism.
For sure. And would you say that in terms of kind of enacting positive change, I guess people within your social sort of circle and people who I guess that who also have I guess big followings, are you kind of knocking on their doors and saying like, look guys, what are you doing, how are you helping raise awareness as well?
Yeah, to an extent. Yeah, I've done we've done a couple fun things online that I've been able to like nominate certain people to do, and it starts a chain and things like that, and then also just personal outreaches and things to people I know. But yeah, absolutely. I think before, I think in general, even in politics and in social issues and things like that, I think before it was almost cool not to care, and now it's not cool if you don't care. Like it's cooler to care now, just in general. You know what I mean? If you're not paying attention, or you're not voting, or you're not if you don't care about climate change and stuff, people now consider that quite ignorant and disrespectful almost. And so I like that now as a young person and seeing other young people, it's like people are holding each other accountable these days, and it's cool to care now, which I like.
That's great.
Yeah.
Back to you, Cyril. Fashion as an industry has copped a lot of criticism, but you're passionate about the idea that fashion can be an agent for positive change. So I'd love for you to sort of tell us a bit about that.
So when we started Palais, we launched from the heart of the art world. Julian Schnabel made our first logo, actually our logo. We hosted our events there, and we felt that the artist is the best one to invite different layers of society, and people would come open to be provoked and open to change their mind. But then we looked towards fashion, and we felt fashion actually does a similar job in bringing change into people's lives, and it happens in a very emotional way. It doesn't happen on a rationale, because fashion technically doesn't make any sense. You're buying something for a lot of money which you don't need, but it does make sense when it comes to ideas, values, dreams, when it comes to expressing yourself, redesigning your identity, questioning normal standards. And fashion has this seductive power of hitting us where we can't really defend us, you know? It creates desires. It allows us to live a life that we otherwise couldn't. And therefore, I believe that fashion has the speed to convince, the speed to spread ideas, but also it creates desire for things. It creates desire for the new. And if you, for example, want to replace an old material with a new one, then you can argue, you can come up with like the most rational arguments, but a designer puts it into a dress and it's there. It's like just being presented in the best possible way. It just found its way into our hearts and it creates reality. And therefore, I find fashion is a powerful instrument for change. Unfortunately, the fashion industry has been stuck in a very old way of making stuff because they are like so busy in designing and marketing and telling stories that they never go back and take the time to reinvent and redesign the core elements, the ingredients of their products, the supply chains. Yeah. And that's something where I feel a very strong disconnect between what fashion actually can be and what fashion is today. But I see massive potential and I see a big role of fashion to play when it comes to change, in what we call the material revolution.
Yeah. George, your next expedition has been halted sadly due to the pandemic, but will involve traveling to the North Pole during winter to look at the impact of microplastics on the ice caps. What brought about this journey and what do you anticipate that you might discover?
It's a great question. This journey really was brought about by an absolute dearth of data on the Arctic Ocean in winter. We simply know very little about it. In fact, the tagline, I was in charge of all the partnerships for the project. And the tagline for it was, we know more about the surface of the moon than we do about the Arctic Ocean in winter. Now, although that's a largely unsubstantiated claim, I think there's some truth in it. It's totally petrifying that this environment, which is a pivotal barometer to the health of the entire planet, and I don't say that lightly, because when the Arctic Ocean's gone, right, when the ice on top of the Arctic Ocean disappears, it's never coming back, ever. Because instead of the ocean being white, it's suddenly a dark blue, right? And it absorbs heat from the sun. And then we enter a negative feedback loop, an irreversible negative feedback loop. So the ice on the Arctic Ocean performs lots of really important functions to the planet. And the fact that we know very little about it for 6 months of the year, I think it's probably would concern like a lot of these people, which Cody speaks about. And in fact, if it doesn't concern every single person on the planet, it should, because when it's gone, and we're walking down a series of one-way streets. And I don't know how to phrase that any more impactfully. When you walk down a one-way street, you can't go back. And these one-way streets aren't just like, oh bugger, I should hit the roundabout, do a U-turn, and do a kind of few lefts, and I'll end up back at the top of the one-way street. Nah, there is no turning back.
No, I mean
so this particular project was really important to us.
Nice. Well, and then when and hopefully are you going to be able to do it?
Well, there's going to be different forms of it that appear. And so really my dream is to head up there in winter and collect data. Now, it won't be the first time it's been done. There is a team of scientists up there, or there was a team of scientists up there on a boat called the Polar Stern. It was an expedition called Mosaic. It was a German-led expedition, and it had, had a whole heap of scientists on board. It's a huge vessel, and there's certain limitations around being on a huge vessel, and certain impacts of obviously being on board a huge vessel. So the light touch nature of what I'd love to do is still very much alive.
and still very much, still hope to do it next year. So, or if not next year, the year after that, or if not the year after that, the year after that.
Yes, George. Ben, obviously, plastic, as we've said, is so prevalent in our everyday lives. So what's been some of the positive impacts, I guess, from your undertakings? And is there a potential to see real change as a result of some of your findings, do you think?
Yeah, unfortunately, because of COVID, all the data that we passed on and the sample that we passed on to our scientific partners are kind of held right there, because usually they rely on students to do all the analysis counting, because it's not, if like we collected over 40,000 pieces of plastic, and has to go through one hand at a time, so it takes a lot of people. So the COVID didn't help us on that. But I think for us, we have to realize that we didn't create the problem just overnight in one time like that. And that will be the same for us to realize and to understand what the problem is and to take action. So what we did with the expedition, the last expedition, is yes, to collect plastic, to try to raise awareness about the issue, but also to try to debunk a myth. Because when you think about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, everybody thinks about picture that they have seen on the internet, a big floating island, and then you go to it, you put your flag, and yeah, I am there. It's not what it is, right? Cody can talk to that as well. He went through that. It's not what it is. It's a high concentration of plastic around and in the water column, which raises the problem. So, which raises the question, what do you do with it? What can you do with it? Is there something you can do to clean it? And the answer, unfortunately, is easy to say, no. Once it's in the water, there is nothing you can really do that will make a big change. What we have to do is to focus on the source. That's what we have to do. So everything that we have been doing and focusing on is giving that picture of, yeah, that's the problem, and trying to try to change our habits and attitude on land. Because maybe I'm going to raise some eyebrows, but I'm going to say that the plastic is not the problem. The real problem is people and how we behave with plastic. When we created plastic, we didn't get a user's manual, right? So plastic, we trash it, we get rid of it. That's not what it is. So we have to relearn how to use plastic. I think that's where the focus must be, because plastic is not bad. It's advanced our society so much that the problem is us using it.
Well, Ben, that's great. Yeah. On that note, I guess I was going to say, as much as we're kind of, fighting the good fight, it would be naive of us to be sort of sat here today without highlighting the hurdles, I guess, that are stopping all of you guys from, being almost more successful in what you do. So Ben, back to you, I guess, if I can. Like, without this kind of cross-country and multi-government campaigns that challenge against plastics in the ocean and, I guess, our use of plastics, that all seems almost entirely insurmountable. But how can we change that genuinely? Like, or your point you've just made, how do you think we? Yeah. How do we make a start?
I don't think, and I hope that George and Cody will agree with me, you don't have to be a superstar to be a crazy adventurer, but everybody has to do something. So what we do is that we love what we are doing, and we use what we are doing to try to have that as a platform to get the word out and to engage people. But even though it's a global problem, solution needs to be brought at the local level, because what I do here and the rules that are here don't apply to other people in other parts of the world. So the best thing that we can do is to have a smaller group and community and people that will act together. I think that's the better reach. And then after, of course, it depends on the government, and government they need to put the regulation forward also that are going to make a change.
Right. Yeah, sure. And do any of you have I guess any examples of local communities? I'm sure you all do, but it'd be good to hear from you all in terms of local communities that are really on that path and really sort of advocating change. Any of you?
Yeah, I think so. Well, one thing I was going to add to that, or thought I had was, in a financially and economically driven world, the best thing we can do is vote with our dollar, right? And so, at the end of the day, that's inevitably what influences decisions in government and in um, societies around the world is what is economically the best for this country or that country. And so to vote with our dollar and to make decisions in our lives in terms of the products we buy, in terms of the cars we drive and things like that, that inevitably on a larger scale, if enough people do that, will shift where the focus is for companies and for governments. I think it's almost like kind of like from that's the baseline is like what are we buying, and
you raised an interesting.
What forms of energy are we because technically by unfortunately not everybody has access to be able to drive, say, an electric car or use have a solar powered house or something like that. I'm not saying that that's feasible yet, hopefully it is soon, but it's one of those things of every time you kind of get into or go to a gas station, you're in unfortunately in turn investing in fossil fuels, and we don't necessarily have the ability yet to completely kind of boycott it in our lives, but we have the ability to make certain decisions that I think will push us in the direction we want to go.
For sure. Yeah, and I was going to say, you make on that note in terms of where we put our money. Like there's a lot of luxury brands. I know, Ben, you're an ambassador for Ulysse Nardin, and they've just recently announced a new watch which has got a case made entirely of fishing nets. But do you think that luxury brands are doing? They're certainly doing their bit, but are they doing enough? And are you sort of welcoming that sort of trend of brands that people are really buying into them more because of, I guess, the carbon footprints that they're kind of thinking about?
Yeah, I can jump into that if you don't mind. Yeah, so I think it's amazing to see a brand like Ulysse Nardin that is doing something because they don't have to, right? It's a luxury product, they don't have to. But I think that it shows the switch of some of those people at the head of those companies, that the company who don't have to make changes are starting to see what the future is and what is going to be. I am in very good relation also with somebody at a high level of Total, and they told me that they have done a lot of switches too. I think by 2050, and I might be totally wrong at that, but I think 30% of their revenue will be and it won't be from fossil fuel, right? They are going to switch, and they are switching. So they know that there is a lot of things happening. Now, is it happening fast enough? Do you have people on different stakeholders that try to hold on to what they have? That's the problem. But to Cody's point earlier, I think that's true to say that what's happening right now is from the bottom up. Right? If you have a base that is trying to change, then people on the top say, "Oh, the market is changing, and they have new needs and all that. So we need to adapt to it." And I think that's what is happening too. But, yeah.
Yeah, nice. Parlay's collaborations have focused on plastic problem. The Adidas collaboration has undoubtedly been the biggest for the brand in terms of global reach. What have been some of the positive outcomes of that project?
When we started Parlay, we felt that we don't want to be preachers. We don't want to attack companies and say, "Oh my God, you're bad," and feel ashamed. And we didn't want to point fingers. We felt that it's way more attractive if you just bring a big company, a big mega brand, to the point that they're changing their direction. And you're working with them on examples of how a future could look. And you're getting them to commit to drastic change. And Adidas did exactly that. They allowed us to bring our idea, our innovation of ocean plastic, which is pretty much a rebranding of trash, rebranding of recycling, which was back then, 8 years when we started, it was failed. Nobody wanted to use recycled material. It was ugly. Nobody liked it. And we brought it back as a premium material, told a strong story, and Adidas said, you know what, we're going to take the risk here. We're going to show the courage, and we're going to go all in, and we're going to not try a little bit of a product here. We're going to put it right on top of our product range. And that helped us because the idea of ocean plastic, the strategy also, the Palais Air strategy, avoid, intercept, and redesign, was not something that we had to preach. It was defined as a new standard by one of the biggest companies out there. And with that, the other companies couldn't look away. They had to follow. And you see now, even Nike is coming with their space hippies, which is a total reaction, you know? And you see lots of other companies moving around. And we were able, with Adidas, with that platform that they gave us, to influence masses of people and to set a new standard. And that is the true gift of that partnership. But then also, like, having access to the supply chain, having access to all their knowledge, to everything, to the innovation labs, and being able to work open and freely and communicate honestly in the most radical way behind closed doors and say, listen, this is working, this is not working. And having this like very honest relationship helped us a lot to, I would say, shape not only our ambition even further, but also have this ongoing reality check of what is possible.
Yeah.
So it was hard afterwards, because, to be very honest, I mean, we are still having this partnership, and it's lasting at least the next 5 years. The contract is a long one, but it's hard for us to find other partners after that, because not so many brands are willing to take these steps and willing to commit and are also excited by such moonshots, you know?
So you've kind of touched on it there, Cyril, but I kind of want to delve a bit deeper into, you know, why is collaboration integral to our collective success when it comes to combating the threats the ocean faces?
These problems that we're facing are so complex that not one superhero, not one organization, one country can solve them. You need to collaborate, and otherwise you have no way of gaining that knowledge that you need, but also you have no way of convincing people fast enough. And decisions have to be made so quickly now that one group can impossibly create like a new mindset, you know? It's only possible with like this mutual understanding that spreads, and by actually more or less developing a new culture, developing a new economy. And that is only possible with collaboration. Also, the part where you normally would take big risks, investing into new technologies, one other has to promote it. You need different players for that. You know, you need traditional investment firms, you need governments with grants, you need laboratories, you need the brands on the other side that take their company as a platform to present the new. If one player would do that, the risk would simply be too high, and it would lead nowhere, because people wouldn't feel like that they're part of something, because that's a very important piece, that change and innovation, eco-innovation as we call it, it doesn't happen overnight. It's a process, it's an ongoing pivoting. And the only way to move it really forward is that if everybody understands that they're in the same battle, and they're also, on the other hand, facing the same competitive environment. And I think we are at this point now where every company on this planet that has a good marketing department and a good research department understands that consumers will not accept anymore brands that don't have a purpose, that don't take responsibility for what they're doing, that are not using their brand to drive change. It's simply a must now. And that's what we all in this movement achieved together. We established a new idea of business. And now it's about manifesting that idea into a new model, a new system.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Cyril. George, you regularly give motivational talks and interviews that encourage others to climb their own Everest, so to speak. And I guess I'd like to sort of touch on that in terms of, you know, if people out there who, I guess the idea being that if you climb your own Everest, so to speak, you're able to kind of get outdoors and really experience and see, you know, what parts of what's going on with some of the world. For people that maybe aren't necessarily able to embark on those kind of outdoor adventures, how else can people be exposed to nature in order to evolve their stances towards things around climate change and actually really appreciate what the hell is going on in this world, which I feel like is a sort of slight hurdle to to this situation.
Yeah, nice. Can I play? We're obviously all online, so it's very difficult to interrupt maybe before you ask the question. So I've just written down a couple of points here, which I think are really interesting, and I'll be very brief and to the point, but they may be able to splice them back in beforehand. But I just find it really interesting about that when Cody mentions like boycotting oil companies like BP and all those sorts of guys, and Total. These guys are totally aware of the shift in demand from us, and in fact, like BP, I really wish I had the figures, and I was desperately like trying to look like I was working and listening feverishly, but typing in to find the figures. But they have invested huge amounts of money in renewables, and admittedly, they're not perfect. Of course, they are. I don't think anybody is perfect. We are humans, and I'm overwhelmingly reassured that we're all, no one's perfect. But I think that oil companies are getting a lot of slack, but they're doing a huge amount to curb our reliance on fossil fuels. That's kind of, I'll leave that one there. That I think not investing in someone like BP, of course, is because they're harvesting the planet. But on the other side, they are responding to a huge demand from all of us to go more environmentally friendly. The second thing is ocean plastics, which Ben mentioned, and all of these luxury brands were really keen to use ocean plastic, and I think that's absolutely fantastic. But picture this: what about this? The demand for ocean plastics is now quite high, right? I can think of numerous brands who are all claiming to be using recycled ocean plastics. Therefore, there's a huge demand on ocean plastics. But actually, ocean plastics, as we've kind of discovered, are very hard to get hold of, right, Ben? They're very hard to actually get hold of. It's expensive, boats to get out there to kind of farm it, if you like, to rescue it from the oceans, and then to change it into a watch strap or a shoe or whatever it is. And it's incredibly hard, and Cyril will be able to speak to that, I'm sure. But I've heard like really concerning rumours that we're now producing plastic, dunking it in the ocean, and then calling it ocean plastics. Is that for me is like really concerning. I don't know what to do about it. I just heard like these rumors, read some articles, and I can sort of see it. That I'm like the plastic producer, and big companies, big luxury brands are demanding ocean plastics, but they're hard to get hold of. They're expensive. What do we do? Here's a solution. Anyway, that's my point made. I think that I can see that route walking down, and I'd be concerned by that. With regards to climbing your own Everest, and how do I encourage people to indeed climb their own Everest, and how would that evolve how do I hope that's going to evolve your perception of the outdoors and indeed become more sustainable? I think that the idea of climbing your own Everest is completely ubiquitous to everybody. Not everyone wants to go outside and climb a hill. Not everyone wants to do that. I totally understand that. But I think that if I can maybe that encourage you not to bother climbing your own Everest, just spend your lunch break, instead of looking at your telephone on social media or whatever, just spend 5 minutes each there, take a deep breath of fresh air, look up and really sort of stand and stare and admire the surreality of the world that we live in, and an amazing world that we live in. I think that has certainly given me a deep appreciation for everything that we have. And off the back of that has given me a deep, profound desire to protect it, and in many ways leave it in a better way than I found it.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you for that, George. Cody, you kind of feel in the same kind of level. Environmental awareness among the younger generation is clearly growing, but there is this kind of sense that people do feel very overwhelmed by, can they do anything? And again, feel sort of simply helpless by these pretty alarming stats that we kind of should be and rightly are being faced with. But I guess what are the small steps that people can take to, do their bit to conserve and improve the health of the oceans?
Yeah, I mean, responding a little to what George said at the end there, I like the idea of, in the beginning, as a first step, almost at least just going out and appreciating it. that's the most motivating and encouraging thing to do, and something that still gives me a lot of hope and optimism when I do, when you do look at all the negative, all the scenes and sights and things that could make you quite pessimistic about the situation, to be able to go out into, like George said, go for a walk around the park, look up at the sky, and just kind of embrace the beauty of it, or go for a swim in the ocean, which we all here have done and like to do, and sort of reinvigorate yourself with just the love for it, which I think inevitably and inherently makes you want to protect it, right? Like, when you love something, you want to protect it. And, when you can reconnect to nature, I find I'm more motivated to, I come in from a nice swim, or I come in from a hike or something, and I'm like, oh shit, well, if I go to the store now and buy something like that's gonna end up back out there where I just enjoyed, like I always say, don't destroy what you enjoy, and so that in the beginning is something I try to, or at least want to encourage people to do, is just go out and enjoy it. You'll be inspired to protect it. And I probably strayed from your question there, but some of the small steps people can take, I think that's one of the first ones. And then obviously just making the right choices and making sensible, sustainable choices.
Nice. Thank you, Cody. Right, to finish, I wanted to hear from all of you, I guess, about the future and the hope you all hold for our oceans. Cody, I'll start again with you. In years to come, what's your hope for the state of the natural world? And do you have any kind of personal goals in this area that you want to achieve in your future?
Personal goals are, it's a tough thing to look at in the face of something that does occasionally seem so overwhelming and so irreversible. But I'd hope that enough people daily and accumulatively over the next few years kind of start to switch on. I mean, that's my hope, is that young people start to really switch on, and I see it happening. Like I see it, I see the education and the information spreading, via social media like wildfire. And I think that there's enough evidence around the world in the drastic changes in weather, and obviously the Australian bushfires and these shocking things that are occurring, what seems like all the time, are enough to shake people out of their I hate to say ignorance, because in a sense, like I'm still ignorant to many things that are going on, but I'd like to see people start switching on, and I'm hoping that if the world does, then in the most optimistic view, we won't have there won't be a chance but to turn it around. That's what I'm hoping. Like it's an optimistic and positive, hopeful view, but yeah.
For sure. Yeah. It's this idea, I guess, of, people embracing.
But it's like, it's like, how else can we really think about it? We have to think that way. We have to think optimistically. Otherwise we're not going to get anywhere.
Cyril, so what developments in the fashion industry excite you most about the future?
The biggest development in the fashion industry is that after 8 years of Palais for the Oceans and 8 years meeting with pretty much all the big fashion groups, they're finally calling and saying, okay, what can we do? That's the biggest change.
Oh, that's great.
That's half of the rent. They're opening the door and saying, okay, we have to do it. We understand. So how do we do it now really fast? That is really exciting. The issue is that some things you can do fast, yes. In some cases you can replace, and ocean plastic is one example. There's no need to use virgin plastic anymore. We can just use ocean plastic for all of it. But other things aren't so easy to replace. it needs a bit of research and development. And I like to compare this phase that we're in with the digital revolution that happened with the internet and everything that turned away from analog. But there you could code it, you could program it, you could make chips, and it was quite a fast process. And now we're speaking at Palais about the material revolution, which questions everything that is toxic or harmful. But that means that you have to actually invent new materials. You have to learn how an animal grows fur or skin or all these things where you're used to just kill life and take it away. Now we have to learn how it actually works. Wow. And it's possible for us. We do understand these things already. We know how to grow fur. We know how to grow leather in the lab without touching an animal. We even know how to make plastic from algae or to grow concrete with enzymes. Theoretically, we know all that. We also know how to make dyes from the same organisms that would create the color in a flower. We know that, but now it needs to be implemented and brought to the level that we can actually put it into production, that we can take the old machines, put it in the other part of the warehouse and put the new machines in and grow all these things. So the development is there, but now we need to 100% believe in that and trust and just invest the hell out of it. And I think it will happen. I see it happening, to be honest. So that is exciting for me. I don't see anymore that we're talking to these ignorant faces that look at you as if you just jumped out of a sci-fi movie. It's not anymore Star Trek, Now it's actually, you can nearly touch it. So we are in the most exciting time when it comes to future materials in the fashion industry.
George, you've talked in the past about rewilding humans. What does that entail, and how will that help our planet moving forward? Give it to us straight.
What does rewilding mean? I think it means something different to every person and has different implications for them. For me, and echoing back to the last question, my absolute hope is that as a species, and I'm sort of zooming out away from the crises in plastic pollution and overfishing and global warming that we've spoken about here, and zooming right out to us as a species when I speak about rewilding, and therefore my hope, almost my witness statement, in a sort of smaller sense of the word, after David Attenborough. I believe that as a species we have become disconnected from our environment, from our planet. And it's really sad to see. And I think one of the benefits, dare I say it, of COVID is that for the first time in some of our lives, we felt vulnerable. We have felt human. We felt like our lives are fragile and vulnerable. And tomorrow we may not be here. And adventure's given me this extraordinary appreciation for the fragility of life. It's given me a remarkably privileged perspective on just how pathetic we are. Yet we believe we are, the all-encompassing, mighty species, which we are really that, but actually we are nothing, because we've become detached from the very source of our food. We've become very detached from the very source of our water and warmth, the three key things for life. I mean, although some of us might be led to believe that Wi-Fi was key to life, actually we go back through Maslow's triangle to the very bottom of life and find out that food, water, and warmth are key. And until we reconnect with those and rewild ourselves in our own way, we'll never understand and be part of the planet and the ecosystem that we need to become part of. So, to coin a phrase from David Attenborough, I'm afraid I mentioned him again, but instead of being apart from nature, instead of being different because we're the master species, we are actually a part. We are included in nature. That is my vision for rewilding and my hope for the future.
Sold. Thank you. And then, what sort of change, you talked about, I guess, memories from when you were younger versus now in terms of playing in the oceans. What sort of change do you hope we might be able to see in your lifetime in terms of the state of the oceans and our natural planet in terms of turning things around?
I think for me that will be in people's attitude, because if you want to change, then first you need to be informed about the problem, but then after you want to have the will to act and to change. And unfortunately right now our world has become very polarized. I live in the US. It's big news right now. It's what's happening, and some part for the climate change. Also, you have people that are against climate change and people that are proponents of doing everything to alleviate what's happening with the climate. So I hope that attitude will change so that instead of trying to discredit each other, we understand what our common goals, because we have to live, we have to survive. I mean, nothing will happen in my generation right now. I'm kind of the one that is going to drop off the face of the world. But my real concern is my kids. Right? I have young kids, a 19-year-old and 13-year-old, and that's what concerns me. But at the same time, I see that the new generation, and here we have seen it with Cody and George, they're very my age, and they are very much into making big changes and taking the steps that are required to make big changes. But at the same time, I hope that not a section of the population is going to be totally against what is happening, and they still can be brought together because they see that there is a very important common goal at the end.
Nice, thank you, Ben. As I said, to finish, if there's any questions that you guys want to throw at each other, please throw them now. Be good to have, if you have anything you want to ask each other.
I've got one.
Go on.
I've got one. For Ben, you spoke a little bit about maybe your age and the difference in generations. And I was wondering, with your wisdom and knowledge of your entire life, and what you've learned and harnessed and gathered over the years, what would you be telling your kids, or maybe actually what would you be telling your 20-year-old self about? Maybe let's scroll the clock back to 20-year-old self. What would you like to have told your 20-year-old self?
Oh, well, I think what I will tell myself that what is important is to follow what you are passionate about, no matter what people are going to tell you, because first you have to find yourself before trying to heal something else. That is very important. And I think no matter what your goals are, crazy or not, you have to be into your environment before you can do that. So that's what I will tell myself. I'm glad that it's what I did, even though my wife was totally against it, even though, because in 98 I did a swim in the Atlantic, and then after I went back in the Pacific 20 years later. And of course, you can imagine how my wife would react to that. But for me, it was very important because it was my identity. And I had to do that for me first in order to use that for a bigger purpose.
Nice. So keep following your passions.
Yeah.
There you go. Never forget that, mate.
Thank you, man.
And that's what you are doing. So I applaud both of you for following your passion and doing amazing things there. And it's I look at the future, and I'm very confident that we're in good hands with you guys.
Awesome.
The pressure is on.
Either one of you two, Ben and or George, if you're ever planning another big swim, I'd love to join you.
100%. Let's do one tomorrow. I'm going to go in the river tomorrow morning. You want to come?
Are either of you planning on doing another one at some point? I mean, it could be whether for personal conquering personal goal or for awareness sake.
Yeah, so that's a good point, Cody, because it's what I'm thinking in the future about doing swims, but not by myself, but having other people come and swim with me. So, we have the same trend of thought there.
Yeah, I would love to be a part of it.
Yeah, 100%. Because swimming's quite a boring sport, right? It's very like you're super isolated in your own head, but being able to do it with someone is cool.
Yeah, if we could have a little group together, and it makes it more interesting.
And Cyril, last question for you. Any upcoming Parlay collaborations that we should know about?
Oh, yes. We are launching a mission in Australia together with Adidas around the Australian Open. And the idea is to raise all the money we need to clean up the Great Barrier Reef completely. That's the vision, that's the dream. It needs a lot of money. So that is pretty much a moonshot for Australia, for Parlay Australia. And we are already operating from cairns, and we are cleaning up as much as we can, but we need a lot of support. And therefore, there's like the stage of that tournament is a beautiful one for us. And I can't wait to kind of put the announcement out. So you're the first one that I'm actually speaking about it.
Oh, I think that's brilliant. That's going to be awesome. Well, thank you for that. There we go, an exclusive on Esquire Neighbourhood for you there. Guys, thank you very much. That kind of brings an end to the discussion. I hope everyone's enjoyed as much as we have. A huge thank you to Cody, Cyril, George and Ben. We really appreciate your time. So thank you very much for inspiring us all. If you'd like to learn more, please visit the Esquire Singapore website, where there's all sorts of information about ocean health. But for now, thank you very much for tuning in to Esquire Neighbourhood. Please do stay safe and be sure to check out all the other brilliant talks. Thanks, guys. See you later.
Thank you for the opportunity.